The teaching learning briefing this morning is on how we get students flipping learning, how we actually get students to do independent work. And this has come off the back of some comments made by Ofsted and also what we're seeing around the school, which is that although teaching is on the whole very effective, our students are not always effective learners because they're not learning independently. They're expecting us to spoon feed them information, and that's creating real problems when they get towards the sharp end of GCSEs, because those skills aren't helping them. They've not got the skills they need to revise. So what I want to do is go through very quickly, because I know I've done this before, but the importance of independent work to student success, just why it is so absolutely vital. And then I've spent a lot of time over the last, I would say the last few months, thinking and talking to kids about the obstacles to doing it, like why don't students do it? And then I want to reflect on those and also develop some strategies which are beginning to work for me in overcoming those obstacles. GCSE courses are called courses for a reason. They're not GCSE lessons, and they're planned with that in mind. The people who make these courses assume that students will be working outside them soon. I think this is going to become even more pertinent when 1 to 9 kicks in for everyone. I haven't looked at everyone else's new GCSE specs, but I know in history they're going to be expected to cover even more content, which means the importance of independent work outside those lessons is going to become even more vital. So I've heard at parents' evenings one of the students saying to Becky, no, my time is my time. I'll work hard in school, but it's mine. And I think one of the things that we can potentially get wrong is that overloading children suddenly in the hope they'll do more doesn't work. If we start saying to a student who's never done so much as 15 minutes work on their own at home, well actually what we're expecting now is 4 hours at the weekend and 2 hours at night. The message I get back from students is really, on your bike, there's not a chance. If you expect 4 hours from me this Saturday and I've never done more than 15 minutes, I'm not even going to try. I'm going to play FIFA instead. It expects students to do more in earlier years and increase the amount incrementally, so it doesn't feel like such a massive betrayal when they reach Key Stage 4. If they develop routines of working at homework independently at home right from year 7, and I think we're actually doing that quite well, what will happen is that when they get to Key Stage 4, it won't come as such a shock. And if you are at the sharp end with Key Stage 4, and year 7, year 8 and year 9 have happened and students aren't that accustomed to working on their own, support students in developing independent routines, even if it's really small. One of the things I'm doing with my year 10 form is giving them a revision timetable, and just start with something. Put down a subject that you're going to study independently each day, even if it's only 15 minutes, and let's get a start there, because it's much easier to improve something once it's there than it is just to start from the beginning. The phrase I like there is, small change is better than no change at all, and it's certainly better than just ranting and ranting at a GCSE class. Complete more work, complete more work, complete more work. The second obstacle, which I think is even more serious, is failure to see the point. Now, I've talked to a lot of year 10 and 11 about this, and I don't think our students always see the link between independent work and improved performance. And I think they complete a lot of independent work to try and make us happy, not because they think it's going to get them a better GCSE grade. And the quote there I've got direct from a student, again, from last year. It says, always banging on about flipped learning. So have a quick go at mind map, because he loves them. But it's missing the point, because that's not the reason I want them to do the mind map, it's so they'll get better. So the solutions I've got about this is, first of all, be clear and honest by why independent work is necessary and provide evidence that it is. Now, Twitter and social media and also lots of blogs that students use can be really helpful for this. If you just show students, I'm not asking you to do anything that most year 10 or year 11 students aren't already doing. And if you want the grades that students across the country are getting, you need to replicate their working patterns. Again, I think I'll keep coming back to this idea of language. I think that's really important about how you speak to a student, but it's all about normalising this sort of behaviour. So saying you need to do this to get a grade that will help you. You need to do this independently so you'll get the skills you need for a C, which you need for college. Continually linking it to their life outcomes, their life chances. The same with use language that puts ownership of learning and the end result on the student. So your grade will improve if you work. It's a simple logical connection. And also show students how life opportunities increase if they achieve high grades. Show them what they can get if they get a grade in your subject. And I put here, not to be afraid to be crass. I quite like doing this with students. If you've got a student you know hates your subject, this is an example that I used with boys before. Yeah, I know you hate this, but if you need to revise this properly, so you'll get into college. And then when you scrape your C, you never have to do it again. Plus you'll get to laugh at me when you drive past in a Porsche 911. So if they don't love your subject, just get in the sense that even if they don't, there is a purpose to it. There's a reason why you're asking them to do what must seem an enormous task. I think a lot of our students have got fixed mindsets, and I checked this with my year 10 class yesterday, skimmed a couple of 10 minutes off my GCSE class to go through with this, and this is one of the points that they responded most strongly to, which is many students just don't believe improvement is actually a possibility. There's no point working on anything if there's no chance of getting better. So they don't want to do the independent work because they think even if they do it, they're not going to get better at that, and that must be terrifying for them. It's also, to me, entirely logical. I understand this. That's why I've stopped snowboarding. My wife paid for me to have snowboarding lessons before we went skiing, and I was awful at it. And I then decided after that, well, there's no point in doing snowboarding anymore because I'm terrible. I think kids feel the same way. If they feel they're terrible at something, then why should they continue working at something they hate? Well, is that many students think high achieving students were born with their knowledge. They nodded at this when I said this to them, and the skills. They don't see a connection between hard work and good results. And again, a direct quote, what's the point? No matter how hard I work, I'm not going to be as good as Loretta. She's just clever. They almost think that these students were just born knowing history or French or science or maths, and that there's no point them trying because they don't see the work that Loretta has put in to get to the point she's in. So this demonstrates to students that anyone can get a bit better at anything if they work. For example, these are quotes directly from what I've used in lessons, but saying to a student who's on a D or an E at history, if you just had a supporting source, that would be a bit better. Not necessarily saying that it's going to make them a genius at history. They're not going to become David Starkey. And if you say that kind of stuff, they'll see through you anyway. And sometimes just that small improvement is what's really motivating for them. And don't expect and only reward perfection. Expect improvement and reward it. So for example, there I'm emailing mum to say you've improved because you worked hard at this at home. Again, one of the problems I think with NCL, I Flip My Learning, which I started, and other things, is that oftentimes we only share the very, very best work that kids produce. Sometimes that's not helpful, because if you're a student who's nowhere near producing that level of work, you just see an amazing mind map that another student's produced, or a poster, or amazing notes, and you think, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, so what's the point? And I think it's important to try and share even a small thing to show that there actually has been an improvement. So students think that, well, at worst, they can at least get a little bit better at something. And also just, don't let students vocalise absolute failure either. It's really easy to just let that slide, but if a student says, "Sir, I don't get this," I mean, you could remodel that with, "Oh, okay, Mike, what don't you get yet?" So they can see that they're at the beginning of a journey. If they continue working at it, well, they will improve. And make explicit links between hard work and success. Point that out all the time, that if you work hard at these subjects, you will improve. An example I've used for this, I've used famous people and celebrities at this sometimes, which they quite like. But I used Nadia from the Great British Bake Off as an example of this. As someone who started really at the bottom of what she was doing, but just kept on acting on improvements and slowly snuck up, and by the time she finished, she was the best. Moving on to the last two obstacles. The fear of failure. I think this is common sense. Trying and failing is terrifying. And I think many of our students feel that it's better just not to try. And complicating this problem is that many of our students have a self-image which is completely at odds with the skills that they think they need to learn independently. I'll put a quote here as well. I mean, you've got a very typical student who feels about themselves. I'm Billy, I love dancing with my mates, I just don't do work outside school because it's boring, it just isn't me. The friends love the way I am. My friends love the way I am. The problem there is that what Billy thinks that she needs to do to improve her history seems a million miles away from what's important for her. It must seem awful, the idea of all the things she loves doing, and I'm saying to her, right, get back to a depressing, boring desk, line up your highlighters, and then load up one of my really boring, nerdy YouTube videos. It must feel to her like that's a million miles away from what she wants to be. And in actual fact, she's betraying herself by kind of doing that, because the things that she sees value in are not the things that are those kind of independent working skills. And here are the solutions, or some suggested solutions I think might work. First of all, show student ways in which they can absorb independent learning skills into their characters without changing who they are. YouTube and social media are really helpful for this because students are using these things anyway. So if they feel like they're the kind of student who doesn't read a book or doesn't make notes, it's unlikely we're going to find one of those students who doesn't use Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. So if you can get resources onto those things, it's getting them to learn in a way that feels more authentic to them, more like being themselves. Use appropriate praise and language to normalise the idea of working independently. Sometimes I think, and I know I've made this mistake, definitely, you almost go crazy when a kid does something independent for the first time. But that leads them to think that that's something over and beyond what's normal. Sort of quote here, just sort of pleased to see that you favourited that tweet on Jenna, who's a historical figure. I agree that's interesting, and just leave it there. Because that normalises to the student that what they're doing isn't something really unusual, it's something that everyone's doing to try and learn. And this is quite a sad one here. Try to remove some of the sting of failure by being proud of improvement in skills, not just the exam results. This is a real student that I taught in year 11 2 years ago, who in the end did get her C. But I had a student who worked really hard. She'd never worked independently before, and then she put loads and loads of effort into doing it. And I was speaking with her after school, and she was angry and in tears because suddenly she had this moment where she realised she'd worked so hard, but she still had to sit the exam, and that didn't guarantee that she was going to achieve. And what I could have done was banged on and on about her about exam technique and revision and what else she needed to do. I don't think that helps. What parents needed to hear was that she has improved. The exam result isn't everything. You know history now. You know, you'll be able to see something on the radio about history and you'll be able to inform your friends about it now. So you've got it already. And even if you did fail the exam and the worst came to the worst, well, I'll still be just as proud of you. And that for them, I think, can be motivating to work independently because they're not just learning for this awful a sword hanging over their neck about whether they're a pass or failure in life. And the last one, lack of study skills. It may be the simplest one, and I've got more on this again in what I've written, but I've come to rely, I probably shouldn't say it, but I've come to rely in year 11 on something I've called the year 11 bounce, which is you get to Christmas and suddenly sometimes you get students who wake up for the first time. They've never done anything independent in their life, and suddenly they realise they need it for college and they're ready. They want to work independently. And the image I've always got really clearly is they go down, they sit at the boring desk I was referring to before, and because they've never studied independently, they've not got a clue where to begin. Some of them manage to power through it, and I've seen kids move from an E to up to a C by that year 11 bounce, but some of them never do, because they don't know what to do, their techniques, they just stop. And my solutions is this one here. I mean, obviously, a lot of this is going to go back to Key Stage 3, and I realise that if you're at the, I keep using that phrase, the sharp end of Key Stage 4, that might not feel helpful, but it is important to look at the long-term plan. Embed different study methods into regular teaching from an early age. I mean, it's not reasonable to expect a student to be comfortable with a technique they've never used before. So if they've never made a mind map, or if they've never made index cards, suddenly saying to them in year 11, make a mind map, well, that's not going to work, because they don't know how to do it. This again has directly happened to me. I caught myself doing this, not at this school, but another one, and just thinking, what an idiot, or how weird I must look to a year 11 student. When a year 11 boy who's suddenly woken up said to me, well, how can I revise? I said, well, why don't you get your phone and record yourself answering an exam question rather than write it and then play it to your friend? The look he gave at me, I'll still remember, it's weird, isn't it? Seriously, sir, do you do that? It was because it was odd to him, because he'd never done it before, so it just won't work. And also, don't overload students with a myriad of strategies all at once. And these are all mistakes I've made. Students say they don't know how to revise, so you go on the internet and pull off 1,001 different revision techniques and whack them in a massive book to the student. They're not going to do any of them because it's too intimidating. I think it's actually far better to choose one and get a student confident with it before introducing another. I've got to say and acknowledge here, Natasha Booth's work with Year 10 has been really good on this because she developed a whole scheme of work for Year 10 which was taking them through different revision techniques so they would know how to use them. And I think that's the right approach. The end point that I try and get to is, if a student doesn't know how to revise, is for them to be able to say to me directly what they're going to do when they sit down at the desk. So here again it's in the quote, but so Ali, you're at your desk, you've got your pens out, you've got your revision guide, what happens now? You need them to be able to tell you, well then the first thing I'm going to do is open it to this page, I'm going to bullet point these notes, I'm going to start to highlight these things, because then, well, I have more faith they're actually going to go home with that plan and try at least something. I think that's about it. Apart from to finish with the dream, which is what I'm really hoping for, and this is all about the independent learning idea. This sounds counterintuitive, but I'd love a student to be thinking, really, it's a real pain Mr. Newmark is such an awful teacher, and I hate it, because I need a B in history to do English at college so I can do law at university, and it means I've got to work extra hard. That's the attitude I think we need to get into students. No excuses. It doesn't matter if you don't like your teacher, it doesn't matter if the course isn't what you want to do. You need to work independently so you can get the grades that you need for your future. And I think that's where, well, we're not going wrong, but that's I think where we've got more work to do. Just pointing out to the students that this independent work is for you, and it's vital and it's necessary. And students across the country are doing it. It's not unusual, it's normal. Cheers, thanks a lot.